Right, we were talking yesterday on the Business Breakfast about Naomi Campbell tying up with one of the founders of Pretty Little Thing to launch a talent agency here in Dubai. And one of the little things that we found particularly interesting was, according to the Daily Mail, that they are locating it strategically in Dubai. Where's that now? In Dubai Hills Business Park. So we were wondering if we're seeing the commercial map being redrawn here in Dubai. And we're very pleased to be joined now by Mark Paton. He's the head of commercial at Bayti Real Estate. Mark, good morning.
Good morning, Brandy.
So, Des Res, the place to be, Dubai Hills Business Park. Are we seeing a shift in where people feel they need to be for a landmark office? Does it no longer to be physically central or off the Sheikh Zayed?
Yeah, well, it really just comes down to that business requirement. So, for their setup, they might have a large workforce that they need to have good access for metro. Or it might be that they just want to have that prestige for their brand image, So if they're looking to be close to the Burj Khalifa and, have that desired location.
Tell me about the demand you are seeing Dubai Hills Business Park.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of companies that are looking at that area because there's obviously good access routes and there's some good office space available. So this has been a big shift for companies that are maybe looking to expand that have already been here. They're maybe looking to get a premises which offers a little bit more flexibility for their staff. So this is a big reason why they've been looking at that area.
Okay, let's dig into that. What are the deciding factors when people are looking to rent somewhere? Is it newer buildings? Is it cheaper rent? Is it just being able to get in?
Yeah, it's a mix of all that, to be honest. I mean, it'll come down to their licence because obviously in Dubai, depending on what kind of company you are, you'll have a different type of licence. So you might have a mainland licence or you might have a free zone licence. So for these companies, that's the main thing they'll look at. And then they'll look at obviously the price versus location, if it's something that they're looking to achieve, and then also the kind of basically location setup that they need for their office, if it's access for their clients, if they're client facing, or if it's just business and it's a back office for their employees that they have their workspace.
You've talked about access a couple of times. How much does traffic and traffic flow play into this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a major part of it because if you think the time that you could be spending in the office, if you are out and about, visiting different locations in Dubai, how easy is that? And for your staff, how do they get in? Is there access to the metro and things like that? So these are obviously crucial to companies when they're planning their business location.
Do we want to be in the newest shiny space? I mean, I'm thinking of things like the new Uptown Tower in DMCC. How much of a premium is there on being in the latest building? Yeah,
definitely. And, I can give you a good example of that. We've just recorded a record sale in the really highly desirable Opus Tower in Business Bay. Now, this tower has obviously been very desirable since it was launched in 2018. I had a client who had basically been looking for an office space to lease, and they saw the office, absolutely fell in love with it, and decided they wanted to put an offer in. And this was obviously a price that the seller couldn't refuse. So it was over 7,000 dirhams per square foot, which is an all-time high in that office tower. So it just shows you the confidence, especially when this chap was a overseas investor.
Okay, can you give me an idea of the kind of industry he's in, the kind of business?
Yeah, he's got a multitude of businesses. So it's not one aspect. He basically deals with agriculture. He also does investments into business as well. So he's got quite a broad array of companies that he's involved with. But for him, when he saw this office space, especially the Opus, he needed to have an asset there.
Where's he from?
He's Eastern European.
Okay, I looked at your record, and it's more than 1,500 dirhams over the previous record.
That's correct. Yeah.
That's just not tipping it over the bar. That's huge.
Yeah.
Why the big gap?
This client had looked at many offices. Okay, he'd narrowed it down to the Opus because he loved the access, he loved what the amenities which were on the doorstep. So for him, he wanted to pay the premium. He just had to have this office. And obviously, when it comes to things like price per square foot, he wasn't thinking about that. He was thinking about this office is the one he wants.
But the fact that it's so much higher than the previous record, what does that tell us about how much in general the cost of buying office space has gone up?
Oh, it's definitely risen. If we're talking about Business Bay, for example, depending on the tower, you're jumping up everywhere because essentially there's a huge demand for people coming into Business Bay and opening businesses. So obviously that plays a key role into the price which is getting sold at, and people are willing to pay the premium to get that office space.
You mentioned flexibility earlier, and we had a big chat yesterday on working from home and people going back into the office or not going back into the office. If you're renting space, how flexible can it be?
Well, this is where you have to kind of look at the area because you might want to settle, say if you're a smaller company, you might want to settle for something in Business Bay which gives you the option for, maybe 4 or 5 staff. But if you're looking to kind of get something that is larger but you want to keep to around about the same budget, then you'd be looking elsewhere towards the south of Dubai.
But when you say flexibility, if I've got a workforce that are only coming in 3 days a week, so I'm using it but not using it, but some days I am and some days I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, presumably if I'm renting a space, I'm renting a space. How are rental contracts keeping it flexible?
Yeah, well, with a tenancy contract, usually you'll have to sign up for a year unless you're looking at maybe a business centre. Business centres offer those kind of solutions where you can essentially look at maybe a less term or long term depending on what your criteria is.
Are we seeing people go for shorter term leases if they can?
Mostly it's a year. Or if it's a larger company, you'll find that they'll go for maybe a 3 or 5 year contract, and they might take a shell and core unit, which is basically just handed over by the developer. They'll completely renovate it, redesign it for their company profile, and they'll keep in that office for quite some time.
So where do you see as becoming the new office centres? Where do you see the new clusters springing up?
I would say there's a big focus on Dubai South, towards the Jebel Ali. Obviously, there's a lot of infrastructure going on there. They obviously got the new airport. So I think that's an area that's definitely worth looking at because with Business Bay and downtown and places like that, you're almost at a capacity, especially DIFC. So there's also talk of the new DIFC, which is going to be coming on. So things like that are going to be attractive for new businesses that are coming into Dubai and want a prestigious location.
How much, and Tom mentioned parking earlier when we were discussing this, how much is the number of parking spaces that an office gets featuring in the discussions that you're having, the negotiations for a sale?
Yeah, I mean, parking, depending on the developer, you can have 1 in 500 per square foot. So, if your office is 500 square foot, you've got 1 parking. Some developers are offering that at 1,000 square foot. So it really comes down to the developer and where they are. But parking is definitely a big topic that is something that a lot of people are looking at because it's the ease again for employees getting in and out.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Mark Paton, Head of Commercial at Bayti Real Estate, speaking to us about the shifting landscape, the shifting map when it comes to commercial real estate.
Dubai Eye 103.8.
Join the conversation.
Right, we were talking